Now, most people, it's true, do actually hate presenting. And that's even those people that appear to be confident and cool and calm with great cadence, great tone, and great delivery. Well, on this episode, I'm joined by Catie Friend. Catie with a C, not a K. Catie is a presenter, commentator, coach, MC, host, and even presented her own podcast show, Chatting with a Friend, and actually was in the top 30 of top mums in podcasting a couple of years ago. Her entire job is to help people communicate better on stage and on screen. We're going to be talking about a variety of subjects about how she got involved in commentary and presenting, confidence, nerves, travelling for work, some quick fire questions, and a little bit of a natter at the end. So, let's get into it. This is Commentator's Corner, and I'm your host, Alex Goldschmidt. Well, for the first episode of 2026, Catie Friend joins me, originally from Western Scotland, I believe, formerly alumni of the University of St Andrews. Catie, firstly, welcome to the show, and thank you for taking the time out of a busy schedule, because obviously winter sports going on here in January and February. It's non-stop, isn't it?
Yes, well, thank you very much for inviting me. I'm delighted to be here, and yeah, it's a busy time of year.
Now, firstly, French and medieval history. What was the thought process behind that, first of all?
Well, I was quite good at languages at school. I did French and German, but German was it was my best subject, but I didn't want to go any further with it, and I didn't want to do just French, and so I basically turned up on day one, and I'm not kidding you, just did like this and stuck a pen into the list of choices. Back in the day, you could just do that sort of thing. And I chose to take Spanish alongside it, and medieval history popped up. And I thought, oh, yeah. Oh, I like stories. I literally thought to myself, I love stories of women with wimples. And I took it as a first year choice, and I really loved it. And I had some really great tutors, and there you go. And I've used the French ever since, and I've never used the medieval history again. But
yeah, I mean, the thing is, obviously, being based out in Switzerland now, where you've been there, I think, for just over a decade, you've sort of become more sporty as the years gone on. I think you said that you in with Schemo Gold, a recent podcast you did with the guys there, you said that I was the most inactive person you could think of, and then you married the most sportiest individual you could probably think of as well. How's that changed your life in terms of sort of wellness, really?
Enormously, actually. I mean, I was an active child because I think we all were in those days. You know, I lived in the countryside and I rode horses and that sort of thing. And I knew how to ski. But as I went into my sort of adult independence, I didn't have the urge for it. I wasn't surrounded by people who were particularly sporty. And I worked in events for 10 years, and well-being is not something you certainly equated with that in those days. Work hard, play hard. And then when I met my husband, two things came from it. One, I realized that making time for yourself was really super important. And I battled with that. You know, we had young kids and he was training for Ironman and all the things. And I was going, oh, where's my time? And I just had to make it for myself. And the other thing is, as everybody knows, and I didn't find out until far too late, is just so much better for you. And then, mental well-being. And we moved to Switzerland. In fact, it's actually nearly 20 years now, and here I am surrounded by people for whom that is just normal. And so they talk about find your tribe. It's a bit of a cliche, but I just ended up surrounded by people who do sport just like that. So yeah, it has been a massive advantage for me.
Now, your CV, as per your website, which you can all find at catiefriend.com, that's Catie with a C, not a K, let's not forget, folks. You've got a lot of hats that you wear. So from presenting to hosting to commentating to even coaching people. how do you actually describe in a couple of sentences exactly what you do? Because there's so much that is involved in one big melting pot. It's like a cauldron making up a goulash.
Well, actually, Alex, I probably could do some advice on that because it is one of those things people say, "What do you do?" And I sort of go, "Oh, man." So my very first thing I say is I'm a sports commentator. And the reason I say it is because it took me a really long time to say that out loud. I don't know about you, but I had 10 years in event management. Then I had a long time, bringing up little kids and just doing it as a kind of a side thing. And then, so when I first said it out loud, it was like a massive deal. And of course, the world did not fall apart. Nobody went, "No, you're not." And so I kind of, you know what I mean? It took me a really long time to say it because I was so nervous that people would think, "Don't be ridiculous." But the next question that always follows that is, what channel are you on? And as a commentator, not all commentators work for channels. We work for the federation. We work for multi-sport events. We work for companies. We work for whoever. And it's quite a difficult one to explain. So to go back to your original question, I start with that, and then I say, but I'm also a presenter, I coach public speaking. And then as soon as I say I coach public speaking, I start to stumble over my words because once again, I just go, "Oh no, everybody's going to say, 'No, you're not.'" And I think, I'm doing myself down here because I go, and and then I quite like, it's a little bit of a pretentious title, not title, but a portfolio career. I quite like that. And it suits me because it's not the same thing every day, every month, every year. And so I still don't have that little elevator pitch quite perfect, but yeah, there we go.
So, obviously, you mentioned about corporate event management. How did the career with regards to sports commentary, presenting, coaching? Because you've also done, back in 2022, the TEDx Verbier talks in Switzerland as both the host and also the speaker coach. How did you make the transition? Was it sort of like someone stuck a mic in your hand and said, "Right, need you to do this," and all of a sudden you don't get the, as the Germans would say, Schmetterling im Bauch, which basically means butterflies in the stomach for those that are not multilingual like us are. But it's more the case of, was it like saying, "Look, we'd like you to do this. Do you want to give it a go?"
Not far off it. I mean, I'd stopped doing events when we moved to, actually when I had my first child, when I had my son, I'd kind of stopped by then. I was not very well during my pregnancy and it just wasn't really working. So I stopped that. And then when we moved to Switzerland, I was pregnant again. And then when we got here, someone had started a local tourist radio. And when I was a little girl, I had wanted nothing more than to be a radio presenter. I listened to Kenny Everett and Terry Wogan, Steve Wright. Like, I just loved it. And so I basically just knocked on their door and said, "Ooh, I'll do it. And I'll do it for free because I just really wanted to try it." And so I did that for 3 ski seasons, 2 seasons in the lunchtime show and 1 on the breakfast show. And I was actually also recorded the evening show for Chamonix as well. And then the kids got bigger and blah, I sort of gave that up a little bit. But during that time, the Ski Mountaineering World Cup came to Verbier. And they realized that their official speaker didn't speak any English. He only spoke French and Italian. And so they asked for somebody to go along and stand beside him and translate everything he said. And I hadn't a clue. I didn't know anything about ski mountaineering. And I just stood there like this. And they liked what I did, so they asked me back for the World Championships the following year. And I was still thinking, I mean, my kids were really wee. I was still thinking, "Oh, this would be nice, I could do this maybe when stuff comes to Verbier." And just right before the end, the president of the Andorran Federation of Ski Mountaineering said, "Do you think you could come to Andorra and do this for us?" And it was like a light bulb, like pinged over my head. And I thought, "Oh." And it just took off from there. And I started doing more of that. And then people said, could you do, and I sort of just started finding myself saying yes and then going, oh, shit.
Proverbially, not literally, yeah. I mean, it's kind of the same thing like how I got involved with motorsport. I was originally a journalist, doing like DTM and Formula One, and this was when you had like David Coulthard and Paul di Resta running for Mercedes-Benz back in those days, and then I ended up, for those that don't know my story, I sort of started ad hoc. I was doing some freelance stuff, did Brands Hatch, did Silverstone National for the PA system just off of Woodcut and Luffield. And then 2017, I get my break in UK karting. Then the person who got me involved, who's now the lead commentator, that's Chris McCarthy for F2 and F3, who works mainly alongside Alex Brundle. He then phoned me 2 weeks before the European Road Tax Championship and said, "Do you fancy travelling to Genk?" I went, "What? The Genk?" So like, it's kind of our story is sort of like a line in the sort of like, could you just? And then here I am now doing sports cars for one of 35 one-make series that Porsche run every single year.
Amazing.
Which is crazy. Now, early on in the days of commentating or hosting, Catie, what did you find that you got wrong most about both confidence and communication?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Confidence, well, there wasn't very much of it. I didn't mind picking up the microphone, but what I always, until really recently actually, even this far into my career, I'm not a mad fan of a live audience. It takes me a while because I am very sensitive to the fact that if I think I'm being funny and nobody laughs, then like it's like a massive, like it's a bit of a crisis.
Yeah.
That is going away with experience, and actually I've found the more I've done commentating, that has actually helped because I don't have to worry about it when I'm commentating. I just yeah. So I would say probably that kind of funny lack of confidence that can maybe come across as a little bit, I don't know if arrogant is the right word, but a bit much. I don't know. I've never actually thought of it. It's a good question. I would say, I think I'm being so funny, and then like going, oh, I don't know if that landed very well. So just this sort of constant like juggling in my head. And in terms of communication, I would say probably maybe one of the more difficult things for me was working with other co-commentators. I'd say sometimes I found that I was either, if it was my event and they were co-commentating, I kind of was a bit, oh, you've got to do it the way I do it. But I maybe just kind of didn't hit the nail on the head. I'm sort of making myself sound like a bit of a nightmare, but I think just that confidence, and I say the last part of that is not knowing what I was worth, and I don't even mean that in like a cheesy way. I just mean literally, how much do I charge? How much do I do? Like, because commentators, presenters, we don't really talk to each other very much.
Yeah, that's actually really, really true, because it's sort of like as we've both gone on in our respective careers, it's a case of knowing, right, do I actually know what I'm worth to this organization? And like, there are clients that, you'll get clients that will pay within 72 hours of receiving your invoice, and they know that you're worth every cent. Like say if it's a day rate, your travel, your accommodation, your hire car, and there's a lot. And we'll get into travel a little bit later on, because I know you've had an absolute mare traveling to the UK and back. But well, we now go on to presenting, and it's sort of like when you watch someone present, like say if it's you're chilling out and you're watching a show, like say Strictly Come Dancing or a talent show, what instantly tells you? What's a sign that you kind of identify without even sort of looking for it to show that the person is good?
There are a couple of things, and one of them is the one that I really struggle with, is no hands. Someone who can make you hear and understand and be engaged without moving too much, and it's just in the tone of their voice, how they use
Hmm.
their facial expressions, and they sound like they're talking to just you. Just
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, that's quite. I mean, I do get a little bit animated with my hands, but I try and minimize it. I mean,
Mm.
especially when I'm doing grid walks. And grid walks, if anyone has done grid walks or gone over to speak to, in your case, the Schemo competitors, that you've got to be very, very much focused on your subject matter. Also, the questions that you're talking to on the individual. Because I actually had a funny moment whilst I was doing a grid walk for GT Open. I basically we arranged it in the drivers briefing to say to the drivers, if I give you a thumbs up and you give me a thumbs up, I'm going to open that door on that car and we're going to have an interview live on air. So I've gone to a good friend, Greg Burkhart. We've opened the door and we're on a live grid and we're talking to him. One of the competitors hits the outside edge of the door as I'm in between door and driver.
Oh,
And I've heard this almighty crunch of carbon fibre. I've apologised to the team. They said, don't worry, it's not. And like literally, I switched the mic off. Don't worry, it's not your fault. It's that idiot over
yeah.
there. So So the driver that hit the door got the bill from Sportec, not through any faults of mine, but
Yeah.
that's what can happen.
Mm.
But for me, it was a case of I've never had that happen before, so I basically decided, okay, that's it. I'm calling the grid walk then. Safest thing to do. That when you're in that kind of situation, I apologised to the team. They said, don't worry, we're going to have a beer or two together later on, and we'll just laugh about it. Overthinking. What do people overthink the most, and how can that sort of manifest into, I would say, a bit of anxiety, but also a bit of misplaced confidence when you're talking on a live stage or talking to a camera on a live broadcast?
Overthinking. Well, my overthinking, as I said, is if I'm in front of a live audience, I'm much better now, but I massively overthink that. Really, am I funny? Am I interesting? Are they listening? And that's been really hard for me to get to grips with. Yeah, I would say, do you mean in all aspects of what I do, or?
I think it's just really, it's not just yourself, but I think
Mm,
it's what you've noticed when you've been, say, for example, at the TEDx at Verbier in
mm,
2022. What were you finding that people were overthinking when they were going through their speeches and, you having the clicker in their hand and stuff like that? So
yeah.
it's about not just yourself, because obviously we all have these foibles that we have to try and overcome as
Mm,
part of this kind of imposter syndrome that a lot of people talk
mm,
about, but how you kind of notice, well, hang on, you're overthinking this. You're taking
yeah.
too long sometimes to click it, whereas your cadence, your tone, your
Mm.
delivery needs to be smooth and concise and topical to what you're talking about in terms of the subject matter.
Yeah, I would say two things came up, if I remember from that, and because TEDx is quite a strict format, no more than 18 minutes and
Hmm.
shorter if possible. And quite often it was very hard to get people to narrow down. I mean, it's so hard to narrow down what you want to say. And we'd often find somebody had a point that they really wanted to make, and we were saying, it doesn't fit. I don't mean this in a bad way, but it doesn't matter. It's not part of the story. It's you've just got it in your head that you want to say it, but it doesn't go with the rest of the talk. You're introducing something that's completely irrelevant in this context. And that's really hard because these people are giving and is a very personal, even if it's a work thing or whatever it might be, it's a very personal thing because you put so much of yourself into a TED talk or TEDx talk, and to try and talk people out of that sort of fluff was
Yeah.
quite hard. And I would say the thing I always say to people is it's a bit like learning a new sport, that at the beginning you cannot, there's so much going on that you can't think of all the things. And so you can only think about the content. And once you've got the content, then you can start thinking about what your body is doing, how your face is, how you're moving, and you can start to sort of separate things out. You know, it's a bit like learning to ski. All you can think of at the beginning is, I'm going to fall over. Then when you get better, it's about putting your feet in the right position or bending your knees or whatever. And that's really hard because people want to do it all at once. They want to do everything, and you're like, okay, let's just start with the content, then we'll move to the voice, then we'll move to the body. Yeah, so I'd say that's probably one of the hardest. And sorry, one more thing you were saying about the clicker. If they're not rehearsed enough, looking at their screen and reading and saying it all over again. And you're like, you've said it, move on.
Yeah. It's like you either do it to the screen and occasionally look back at the audience from time to time, or you look at the audience whilst talking about it. Don't, as you said, don't repeat. I think that's one of the biggest things with regards to presenting or even commentating. If you keep on repeating yourself, you've got to try and get yourself out of that kind of ever perpetuating cycle. And sometimes I have to I find it's quite good to take a deep breath if you're thinking, hang on, I've just repeated that in the last 3 races. I don't want to do it for race number 4 in a row.
Now, I actually have a sign on the front of my screen when I'm commentating that says breathe.
Yes. Yes. Or the first thing I do is switch the microphone off, take a quick swig of a drink, then take a breath, and then come back. And that, you know, and that's another thing, is hydration is actually quite crucial, because in a way we're the storytelling athletes, not the athletes that are out on either the circuit or on the mountain or on the trail. Confidence and nerves are another big thing within this business, and I always find that I used to be absolutely scared shitless. The first time I was having to commentate at a circuit, but now whenever I get to a circuit now, or quite recently I've moved into the world of lead commentary for mixed martial arts late last year. I have the good butterflies where you know your adrenaline is starting to spike as you get closer and closer until that first, like when they say, okay, you're live, and it's good. But it seems like nerves are something to actually use in a good way, that you can channel that nervous energy. Whereas initially in the infancy of my commentary career, which was alongside doing a full-time office job within the automotive industry, I had that kind of like, am I doing it right? Am I saying the right things? Am I telling the story in the correct manner? Whereas now I can go, right, okay, let's go. Nerves are something that we can use to our advantage, can't we?
Absolutely. And it's the same. I mean, it's the same with anything, with sport, with exams. I find exactly the same as you, exactly the same trajectory. At the beginning, you just think, I don't have a clue. I don't know what this is. And now what I try to do is when I've finished the job and you've got that massive adrenaline high and you have a client saying, that was great, thank you so much, come back next year, and you're when I'm still in that mode, I say to myself, remember how this feels, because you know you can do it. And I actually physically say that to myself, because then the next time a new client comes along with a new sport or a new event and you go, I say to myself, no, because the last time you did this, you put in the work, you did what you had to do, you prepared yourself until you could have talked for 7 days straight. And sometimes I actually have an event where I have to do 10 days live broadcasting, and it's an insane amount of work, but I do it. And so I actually have to say to myself, you're not starting from scratch here. You might be starting a new sport, but you are not starting this from scratch. And that has really helped me. I mean, the experience itself helps, but also just harnessing that feeling of, I did a good job. And the other time I get really nervous is when I haven't started my prep. And I know that I have a lot to do and that time is a ticking, and maybe I'm a little procrastinating, or I haven't had time, or been with another client. And then again, I have to say to myself, look, you have this period of time in which you can do your prep. You know how to do it. Once you've done it, you will be fine. And it's like a lot of like crazy self-talk, but it has really helped me, because the butterflies are good. And I'll tell you that a kind of a good example of how this has evolved is that just last weekend I was in Spain for the Ski Mountaineering World Cup. And I haven't been the on-site speaker for 5 years, because when they went into the studio to start the live streaming, they took me out of the field and they put me into the studio. Completely brand new. Had no idea, just made it up as I went along. And I've learned a lot. I've asked and asked and asked. But it's always been, there's a lot to do to prep for a World Cup event, etc. Anyway, the other speaker had gone off somewhere else, and so they brought me in to do the on-the-ground speaking. Long story short, they had to change the schedule. The person who was replacing me in the studio could no longer do it, so I had to do both I had an evening. And so I started the day as the race announcer on site, and then they moved me into the studio for the semi-finals and the finals. And the evening before, I just took an old script, because thankfully it's the same running order. I kind of jiggled it about a bit, changed this, that, and it updated my knowledge on whatever. And because it's a sport I know pretty much inside out. Mm-hmm. And believe it or not, I made it onto the live stream with 1 minute and 28 seconds to go because of technical issues. And I just sat down and I went, and I just thought, wow, that is progress. That's like a whole leap in my understanding of my own abilities, because I just went, yeah, it's fine. I can do it. I'll sort it.
Yeah, it was kind of like with regards to Porsche Sports Cup and Sprint Challenge Suisse for me, because last year it was a test weekend at Portugal at the Algarve circuit, and they said, are you comfortable with going to the grid, coming back up to the box, and then coming down to do the podium interviews? And I was like, yeah, fine, this should work quite well. So with every circuit, you have a different commentary box location. It's still on the pit straight, but you've got different ways of getting through. And luckily enough, I'd found that there was a great one at Misano. They actually had an emergency staircase that was for staff only. So it was like one of those old sort of like spiral steels. And I went, this will save me 60 seconds and I won't be out of breath getting onto the grid. And it was great, because it gave me another opportunity to go, right, I can do this. I don't need another individual. You just need one person who speaks English, German, some French from time to time. And it was a case of let's just make it like proper Michael Bay style. That's how I wanted to do it. I wanted to like roughshot it a little bit, so to speak. But yeah, it's how things can change. And I still remember there was a post you did on Instagram where you were just checking your mic. There was like a picture you looking at your camera on your phone. It's like, yeah, this is for the benefit of the studio, yeah. And that was on that very weekend. So, I mean, it's one of those things that's actually quite good. But it also brings us, like you said, with regards to telling yourself you can do it, because there are so many people in our industry, as presenters, as commentators, as hosts, as MCs, as podcast hosts, we do always talk in some way, shape or form about those two words, imposter syndrome. What's the sort of like telling yourself you can do this, your best way of getting around that situation?
What's my best way of doing it?
Yeah, of getting around it, thinking that you have imposter, like when you have that sort of self-doubt come into your mind.
I think probably now I don't have it as much as I used to. Even if I'm offered something big and scary, I'm now at the stage where I have worked really, really hard to be better at my job. I've actually, I have basically chewed the ear off every single commentator I've ever met and just said, tell me about this, what about this, what about this? And I've been on courses and I have improved. And I think just also, I'm about to be 53, and with that kind of just a bit of age, life. I don't, even if I'm scared, if someone has asked me to do the job because they have recommended me or they've heard of me, I kind of think I probably should be here. I might be scared of the actual task at hand, but I can't say it never happens, but it's rare these days, and that has taken a lot of hard work on both the actual career side and on a personal level.
It kind of, in some ways, you said about preparation, the 7 Ps, piss poor preparation promotes piss poor performance. And that is a motto that I stand by religiously, because, coming up, I've got 2 karting events, one of which is a series finale for a winter series, which we had last week in Belgium. I'm off to southern Belgium, and I'm off to the same circuit again in a couple of weeks for another one-off event. And then I've got to go to southern Belgium, so I'm still flying into and out of the same airport. But I think preparation is also a good way of counteracting imposter syndrome, like saying, you're here to do a job, you make sure you put the hard work in. And I think one of the other things for me that helps me counter imposter syndrome is that you can never have too much information.
Oh, never. I don't know about you, but I can get a bit obsessive, and I think the best commentators are a bit obsessive. You sometimes see, Andrew Cotter's notes up for sort of auction for for a Six Nations match and things like that, and I just thought, I'm like always like, if somebody posts a selfie of themselves at their console in their booth, I'm like zooming in. How do they have their notes? How did they do that? And if I'm doing a new sport, I did the FISU Winter and Summer Games last year. I did 2 brand new sports, and I basically, for the ski orienteering, I contacted every single athlete I could find on Instagram, asked them a few questions, and asked them to voice note me the pronunciation of their names, and like to the nth degree, because you can never have too much information. And what I think about that is that you're never going to use it all. But the 2 things it promotes, one, as you say, it gives you the confidence, because you're like, okay, well, whatever happens, I'm pretty sure I've got this covered. And then I feel like you sort of wear it lightly. After you've obsessed, it's sort of there, so you can just go.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I completely agree. Funny enough, when you were at the FISU World University Games, funny enough, I was flying back from Dusseldorf on the Monday. So because obviously Six Rent-A-Car had the contract for all the universities. So I had I had South Africa, Poland. They were all so I noticed all the cars having the FISU sign and went, oh yeah, Katie's been here doing the tennis this weekend. And what was quite cool was the amount of colour that we have with, say, like the World University Games. You've been where it was in Italy for when you said ski orienteering, and you're also doing the commentary for the closing ceremony for both the summer and the winter games as well. But other things apart from that, let's get on to the travelling side. You've done Tour des Géants in Italy, with the ultra trail running, the Africa Eco Race, formerly known as the Paris-Dakar, if people might remember, the likes of, I still remember the days of Ari Vatanen in the Peugeot 405 T16, absolutely roaring around, and you've been doing that since 2018 as well. With regards to travelling for work and doing remote commentary, what's the biggest myth from your aspect about travelling for work when people ask you about it?
That it's glamorous.
Yes, another one that agrees with me. Another one that agrees.
Yeah, it's so glamorous, so exciting. You're like, no, I'm on a 6:30 EasyJet flight from Geneva, and I live 2 hours from the airport, and I don't see when I get there. Let's not beat about the bush. It is exciting. We are enormously privileged to do what we do and to visit the places we do. And many of my sports are mountain sports, so I get to see the most spectacular places. But the non-stop traveling, especially when my kids were little, was exhausting. And I was I always came home about half a stone heavier than I went away because, you're being fed and looked after, and then there's a beer, a glass of wine, and yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, that is the myth. But yeah, it's a privilege, but it's not like glamorous.
I mean, for instance, like my previous weekend, I was staying at the Ibis Budget Heathrow Central. My flight was at 7:10 the following morning. Then had to go through, then had to wait. Flight was delayed due to low-lying fog. So 25-minute delay from gate to taxi to the runway, and then a further 25 minutes, which meant I dropped off to sleep before we'd even got through the safety briefing. And then you land up, you wake up, you're a little bit groggy, like thinking, okay, right, I've got to get my backpack. So if you're on the exit seat row, like I was, your coat, your backpack, if you take carry-on luggage, if it's not in the hold, you've got to remember to get all that out, and everyone's trying to buzz past you because everyone's in a damn rush. And then you've got to wait for an eternity to go and get your hire car. And then it's drive to the location. And then, I didn't get back. I think my flight was at 9:35 from Brussels Zaventem. I'd actually caught up with one of the competitors and his dad because we were on the same flight back to Heathrow. Flight was delayed again, 20 minutes. So we all got to the gates, and so it was BA, and it was usual, group 0, Finally got to group 5, and then obviously that's the big exodus when everyone piles in, tries to get through, and I'm just like thinking, okay. I then have, and then because some of these companies, they still print out the boarding passes where you can just put it on your smartphone. Well, they'd reallocated the seat because the plane had been changed, so I've got and clicked my boarding pass on. Seating issue. I was like,
Oh.
So he just said, and it was the guy who checked me in for my hold package and down in the terminal that said, oh, yes, because we've actually moved you a row back. And I went, oh, that's fine, not a problem. And I got back at 3 a.m. on a Monday.
Oh, yeah, it is a bit brutal. And the thing I always find is that, I'm quite an outgoing person. And when you do what we do, you have to be on all the time. You're on from the minute you get up because you're breakfasting with colleagues or clients or whatever. You are then talking and welcome to here and this is that and da 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 and excited for that, and then it's dinner, and then it's a briefing, and then it's and then you get on the plane to come home and you're just like, I'm quite often utterly fried, and when the adrenaline wears off, it's like someone's taken my batteries out, and I don't want to talk to anybody, and I don't want to have to deal with anything. And so like I'm kind of borderline grumpy on the way home because I'm just like, please don't bash your bag into me, because I've smiled and done enough this, and I know I sound like a complete cow like right now when I'm saying this, and I'm not always like that, but it's like someone has removed my batteries. I'm done.
I've done a completely different routine now for since the middle of last year. As soon as I'm away from that track, that is my time. So the minute I finish dinner and I said, okay, guys, girls, see you in the morning, drive to the hotel on my own, go to my hotel room, shut the door and put the do not disturb sign on it. Because like literally when you're doing races all the time, like say, I think the most I did in one day was 25 races.
Oh my word.
And that was from 10 o'clock in the morning until 7 o'clock at night. I didn't get to bed until 11 o'clock, and I had the worst night's sleep. And then we had the finals the following day. So when commentators want their time, folks, just please respect that, because we're human beings at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, the thing when I went to FISU in the summer to do the tennis, they changed the schedule the night before. And so that meant I had to prep for the thing that I was expecting to do in 2 days' time, as well as the thing I was already prepping for the next day. And then I was on air with a brand new sport with no expert next to me for 9 hours with 3 10-minute breaks, at which point I had to whip off my headset, hoon down the grandstand, race to the loo, shout at all the women in the queue, going, "I'm the commentator. I've got 3 minutes." They're like, like Moses in the Red Sea. They were like, "Go, go, go, go!" And so, and it's more, and it's just, because once you're done, as you know, then you go back. You have to look at today's results. What's happening tomorrow? Is anything happened? And again, it's the most glorious privilege, because it's a great job.
Yeah.
But sometimes you're just like, oh, I'm absolutely fried. And I remember seeing Ed Lee, the BBC commentator, who's just brilliant. And I'm already fired up for him and Tim Warwood during the Winter Olympics. They're a hilarious pairing. But I remember seeing him on TV, and I know him because he used to live in Verbier. I don't know him well, but I know him well enough. And I saw him at the end. I think it was the Paris Olympic. No, what was the first one they did at home? Was it the Tokyo, when they were all kept, because it was all
Tokyo Olympics, which was delayed by
COVID.
a year, wasn't it? Yeah.
And I remember seeing him in the studio with, I don't know who it was, Claire Balding or Gabby Logan or one of those. And towards the end, and he was just looked like a ghost of his former self. And I messaged him, I was like, "You look exhausted." He's like, "I'm actually nearly dead." Because there's everything, like all the things all the time, and the prepping and the running and the being on and the so yeah, but still it's exciting.
Yeah. Now, how do you protect your energy and your voice when you are on the road? I mean, forgetting obviously what you said, that we all sort of end up a little bit heavier, thanks to especially the food's really good in Italy, folks. That's all I'm going to say on that one. Especially with a nice little glass of vino rosso. That's all I'm saying. But how do you protect your energy and your voice when you're on site, or whether you're studio based?
A little bit like you just said. If I can, I will escape as soon as I can, and that's another thing that has come with age and experience and losing the imposter syndrome. My sort of biggest one, the multi-sport events are big ones like that. But the good thing is that you're usually kind of around other commentators, and everybody knows, everyone scatters. But the one I've had to work really hard on are the sort of multi-day same event. So, for example, the Tour des Géants, which is 10 days of presenting the live streaming as the sort of lead presenter. And in the middle of the week, when the runners start coming in, the first men always come in at like 2, 3, 4 in the morning. And so we have to be there. But what I've learned is that when I don't need to be there, I'm not there. I literally, and I say this, and now I kind of have a leading, not leading role, but I sort of look after, if you like, the other presenters. And I said, if you have time off, go away. Literally, go back to your hotel, go and eat, go and shower, sleep, talk to your kids, whatever you want to do. Do not hang about thinking, oh, maybe they need me, because you will be dead by Wednesday. And we need you till Sunday.
Yeah.
And that has been the biggest learning for me, because I quite like, I'm quite sociable as a person, but I have learned, and just drinking water, non-stop drinking water all the time, as often, as much as I can, because I had a winter, about 3 or 4 years ago. I'd been traveling all winter, and I actually spent all summer in speech therapy with a speech therapist, because my voice had gone like this, and it was squeaky, and it was vocal fry, and it was really nasty and painful and tiring. And so I spent all summer seeing a speech therapist, just working on exercises to fix it, but also to learn how to warm up, how to be ready to do what I do.
I think also, coming on to hydration, one of my friends who works in sports therapy and nutrition, he actually said, you know what, you commentators are athletes in your own right. And he's put me onto electrolyte drinks, and I swear by them, because the first thing that I do if I'm on site, the first drink that will touch my lips, even before breakfast, is an electrolyte drink of some description, because you get the minerals, you get all the relevant bits and pieces that you need. Because even us commentators, we do get hot, we do get flustered, we're in a confined space. I mean, there's one commentary box that I go to on a regular basis. It doesn't matter what time of year it is a flipping sauna. And it's the one that I've just been to at Carlton Gate, so I have to crack the window every time.
Mm.
Okay, so I know that things are getting a little bit closer towards the end of the episode, Catie, so we're going to try and wrap things up a little bit quicker here. So, some quick fire rounds. Best place you've gone to for work?
Oh, pretty much every mountain resort I've ever been to. They're all just spectacular.
Okay. Early flight or late flight?
Early.
Window seat or aisle?
Aisle.
Okay. Do you prefer being the driver in a hire car, or would you rather be the passenger?
Depends who the other person is that's likely to be driving.
I mean, it's one communication myth that you would love to retire.
Communication myth, what do you mean? As in?
One thing that you would advise someone to saying, don't ever use that when you're communicating to people. So a way of coming across.
Well, I have a real issue with, hi guys.
Oh yeah, or it's
and it's not actually about, oh, I'm a woman, don't call me a guy. It's not that. I don't even know, but I have always hated it. Oh, hi guys. So guys, listen. I
always prefer the term, hello everybody.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone.
Yeah, morning everyone. How are we? It's kind of one of those things where you sort of think, like when I'm presenting to camera, it's a case of I make sure that you lot are engaged. And I always find that you said about it earlier on when we were talking about the fact of, am I funny or not? Is it, I always try and say, well, look, I'll throw the UK quips in during the commentary, like say David Addison, for a man who is the voice of motorsport, in my opinion. I think he's, I grew up with, we're both in the same age group anyway, Catie, in the fact that Murray Walker was the voice of motorsport. God rest his soul.
Yes.
Then you had Charlie Cox, and now in our modern day and age, David Addison is that man that you can, and it's like, say, where he'll say like, oh, he's away like a slab rat, or so we can use the humour and the conjecture. And there was quite a funny thing where, like he's run away like a cat scalded by a hot tin roof, for instance. And so I was having drivers in Europe, like Dutch, German, Belgian drivers coming up and saying, what does that mean? And I said, like, literally, you were away by a second and a half after the opening lap. So I then thought, well, Alex, make it topical. And I said, oh, it's just like Sebastian Vettel. He's already escaped the DRS zone in the first lap, so people would then understand it. So I always find that with the presenting to camera, have that serious edge, but with the commentary, you got to make it a little bit more light-hearted, haven't you?
Yeah, and I find that a race announcing, emceeing, that sort of thing, I'm also a little bit more relaxed now than I used to be. And I think there's a difference between trying to be funny and injecting a little bit of humor.
Yes.
Because, if you're like Ed Lee and Tim Warwood, who are just funny, they're just funny guys, and the stuff they say is hilarious.
Yeah.
I'm not like that. I think I can be reasonably humorous, though. So I think there's a little bit of finding the right line there.
Yeah, I think it's kind of, I'm a bit of the age of David, where I will throw in a statement like that just to add a little bit of injection of humour, but not try and be funny at the same time. And the amount of people, I mean, I've been warmly welcomed by the team at Porsche Sports Cup Suisse, and that they've now extended my contract for a further 2 years. So right up until the end of 2027, and I keep on meaning to visit Switzerland. So you never know, if I do manage to get over there, I'll give you a shout and I'll come and visit. But Catie, thank you so much for your time. It's been a real pleasure. Don't forget, for you folks watching, I've got to put in the links in the description down below, Catie's Instagram page and also her official website, which is catiefriend.com, as I said, with a C, not a K. But Catie, thank you so much for joining me here on Commentator's Corner, and hopefully at some point, if we don't catch up in person, well, there's always the internet.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me. It was an absolute pleasure.
Well, firstly, I'd like to say much love and big, big, big thanks to Catie, who's currently deep in prep for a lot of upcoming events, as the winter season is still in full swing here in 2026. And I hope you all found, in some ways, this episode of Commentator's Corner quite useful. So if you have, please give it a like. Why not subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell. And also, if there's someone you know out there that isn't a fan of presenting, maybe share this episode with them so we can help give them some kind of advice for them to move on and get better and better and feel more confident about it. So don't forget, links are in the description below for Catie's Instagram and for her website. And I'd just like to say, this has been another episode of Commentator's Corner. Don't forget, we are on Spotify, on YouTube, on Apple Music, and so many other platforms. So until next time, we'll see you soon. Goodbye.